and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we are talking about how to change your mentality to serverless first. If you want to know more about serverless, cloud computing, or software engineer practices in general, subscribe to my channel in the red button below. I post videos on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, so let's get started! This is another episode in my series, This is Not a Podcast, and today I have a special guest called Angela Timofte. She works for Trustpilot and she's been in the whole migration from a traditional environment into serverless, and she's been driving the migration and the adoption of DynamoDB in their company. So in this interview we will listen about the migration of Trustpilot and more focusing on the database aspects and how she does it in her team. So let's get to it. Hello and welcome to another episode. Today I have a very special guest. She's from the Nordics, she's living in Copenhagen. She's Angela Timofte, a data platform manager from Trustpilot. We know each other for many years and we are good friends, and I'm super happy to have her here. She's also the user group lead of Copenhagen group, of AWS user group, and is very active in the Nordics. So I'm super happy to have you here. Welcome, Angela.
Hi, yeah, thank you. And thanks for the nice introduction. I'm super happy to be here for sure.
Yes.
And chat
How are you
with
doing?
you.
How are you doing?
All good. At home, as majority of us these days. So, yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super happy to have you here and talk a little bit about the Trustpilot experience on going serverless, your experience on the serverless mindset, and also you are working a lot with databases and Dynamo. That is one of my favorite serverless services. So we are going to talk a little bit on adoption on Dynamo in organizations. So I think it's a very interesting chat that we are going to have.
Yeah, those are my favorite subjects for sure. So I'll enjoy this chat for sure.
Cool. So maybe you can tell us a little bit first what Trustpilot does, what you're doing there, and how everything started.
Oh, yes. I'll start with introducing myself, maybe. So I've been working at Trustpilot for 5 years and 5 months, which is considered a very long period. Not because it's like a terrible place to be. It's actually really amazing to work there, but the company grew a lot. When I joined, we're still in the startup mentality, and now we're, I think, a bit more than 700 employees.
Wow. So, are they all based in Denmark?
No, we have 8 offices right now all around the world. I'm based in Copenhagen. But yeah, we have offices in US, in UK, even Australia. I would really like to go there for sure. But yeah, Germany and Lithuania as well. So
nice.
We grew a lot. So the company changed quite a lot as well. That's why, we changed people as well. But I've been here for 5 years, and I'm very happy with the company. And for who doesn't know what Trustpilot is, even though I think everyone should know what we do, we are an online review company and we collect reviews about companies. So the idea is if you want to purchase something and you don't know, you never used that company before, you go and check on Trustpilot to see if you should trust it or not. And of course, the opposite, where you use the service and you want to return the favor to write a review so others know what this company is doing. I think like the main reason why I've been in this company for so long is the mission that we have in helping people, both businesses to improve their services, because of course when you get feedback you can improve on what you're doing, but also consumers. And I think now especially with the COVID-19, when everyone needs to purchase online, like all your purchases are online. I'm using it myself like quite a lot. I use Trustpilot quite a lot.
How many times it happens that you are browsing Instagram and then it's like, oh, this product is perfect, and then you're like, yeah, but I don't know who is this company. I never heard about this before.
Exactly. Especially on Instagram nowadays, when like you scroll and you see all these like, oh, 70% off, and you're like, something looks fishy. Why is it so cheap? And then you go and read about the company, or like you see they didn't exist 3 days ago.
Exactly.
You're like, maybe I should skip this really good offer.
But it's, I think it's something very, very useful, as you say, in these days as today.
Yeah, for sure. As I said, I think the other day I was looking to purchase something, and it's something that you normally buy in a store, but now you can't go to the store. So I was like, I should check this company on Trustpilot to see like, are they good or not? So I think that's like one of the main reasons why I really like working at this company. And then of course all the amazing people we have, and moving closer to what I do it's like the technology we're using, and the fact that we're always like trying to innovate and build things that will last, and things that will scale with the users that we have. So it's challenging, and I love it.
Did Trustpilot started as a cloud native application, or you started on premise? You don't remember?
No, I do. I was like, of course not cloud native. The company was founded 11 years ago.
Wow.
I'm guessing that right. But as a startup, you usually, especially in that time, now it's much easier to start in the cloud, and there are more people that know how to develop in the cloud. But back then it wasn't like that. So it was like, just try something, basically, and what you know. And I mean, with databases, for instance, we started with MySQL, and it was on premise, and like all those great things, And
there were a lot of migrations in the history of Trustpilot. Then the migration to the cloud, and then the migration to serverless.
I think you've been to some of my talks where I presented some of the journeys that we had in moving to the cloud, and migrating from one database to another, and like, all the struggles that we had. So
we are going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm pretty sure Trustpilot is not the only one that went through that process, and many other organizations will want to go that road. So it's always good to share the experiences with them as well. So basically the last migration then that Trustpilot went, or the last kind of conversion, was to serverless, or how that was that? You were there.
I was right there when it happened. It's actually quite nice to be able to like go back in time and remember some of these things. But we started looking into like the whole serverless concept and what it is back when they announced the Lambda functions.
Wow, long time ago.
Yes, I know at some point I was actually looking to see when did we first started, and I had some messages on Google Plus. So it's been old since we're using Google Plus. And it was like right after the reInvent, when they announced the Lambda functions.
2014. Wow.
Yeah, and then like we had some people that went to that conference, and when they came back, they were like super excited and like, we need to do this, like no more robot scheduling, and like all. it wasn't that easy. Like when you were saying like, oh, let's build a robot, let's schedule this. We'll be like, oh, okay. That changed. But yeah, it was like right after that, we started looking into it. And of course, like the people that went to reInvent, and that's like, I can see that every year when people go to reInvent, when they come back with like so excited and they want to try so many things. I'm that person as well. So
you were there last year.
yes, I was. I love reInvent, but yeah. But yeah, people come super excited, and that's what happened with Lambda function as well. And yeah, they came and it's like, oh, let's try this, and we should move everything. And of course, the ones that weren't there, they were like,
why?
Just leave me alone. I know how to do these things this way, and I can do it fast. And yeah, why should we change it? And yeah, that was honestly the first thing that we encountered with serverless. Like people was so new. We people didn't even hear about this. So yeah, it was quite a challenge to try and change the mentality and to show the benefits. And I mean, at that point, there weren't that many tutorials or videos. People are so lucky now. Like you are making so many videos.
And me and so many other creators, because now if you Google serverless, there is a lot of things happening and coming out as a search result. When I started, there was nothing.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, imagine like telling, I don't know, like 60 engineers to like, no, now we're doing serverless, and they never heard about what serverless is. And now they need to learn a completely new technology. And I mean, if I think back then, it was so different than what I was used to do. I mean, at that point in time, we were still having monoliths.
Yeah.
Right. And from monoliths to
serverless
Lambda functions, and it's like, wait, what? I need to split into what? So, I mean, yeah, it was a big change for sure. So it took us quite some time to really understand, to see the benefits. We started small.
What was the process? So you started small, maybe with a group of people. Did you do some prototypes to show the benefits? What were the steps that you took?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we just tried to play with it. I mean, I think some of the first Lambda functions were like, oh, here is posting into a Slack channel or things like that, you know, like just playing with it. And there were a couple of people that wanted to give it a try. And then, yeah, we definitely started slow to see what exactly can we do with this new thing. Because, I mean, also when something is so new, you don't know how much you should trust it, right? And like, how are you going to debug after? Or like, you don't have the support of
and there are
like,
no
the community.
tools almost.
Exactly. So yeah, you can't just jump all in. And that's what I'm saying to everyone, regardless of what tool or anything that it's too new, like just take your time, look around, test the washers, and then maybe move fully. And that's what we did. Like we started slowly. We had pushback from people because they were used to build things in a certain way, and of course moving to this was taking them longer because they didn't know how to use it. So yeah, it was always, and you also need to deliver, right? It's not like you have all the time to go and learn and read, and like you're not in school. Right?
The stakeholders want the new features, the bugs fixes.
Exactly. So you need to come with the benefits, so the others understand as well. Like maybe the not so technical people, it's like, but why would you invest in this? And but I can say it was a very nice conversation in Trustpilot at least, because people could see the benefits right away, and we
What was
invested a
the
lot.
main benefit that you were trying to sell to the employees for serverless?
I mean, definitely scalability, because as you'll hear maybe later about our journey into migrating from one thing to another, that was always an issue for us. The company grew so much, so quickly, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We're not complaining, but you need to adapt. And that was one of the main benefits with introducing serverless, the fact that you can scale up so fast. And then, of course, the cost, like when you talk with people that are not necessarily super technical, when you mention cost, you'll get their attention, right? So it's always good to mention that as well. So those were some of the things that they were very important for us, and we managed to convince people. And once we showed how easy it is actually to develop this way, people got more and more interested.
So then now you have a group of people that have tried things, have gained experience, you convince your stakeholders, and then how you started your migration process. You said you had a monolith, and what next?
Yes, so I mean, there were definitely a couple of stages in this journey, and the first thing, from the monolith, we knew that needs to be gone, and we started to speed it up. And then we put in place this principle, like once we got more experience with serverless, we put this principle in engineering that will always go serverless first. And the way that was formulated was that you'll try serverless, developing with serverless tools. If that doesn't work, then go to containers. And if that doesn't work either, then the last resort is an EC2. Was mostly encouraging people to just start the discussion there, basically. So we didn't go to that way to force people, but it was okay, just try it out. Exactly. See how it goes. And in the beginning, we had the way we're split in teams. Whenever a team wanted to develop a new feature maybe or something new, we'll have these architecture discussions where we'll bring more people, and those that were experts in this field and that one, and we'll have the chat on to okay, what's possible? Can we do this or that? And that's how we shared the knowledge in the whole company, and we got more people to be able to develop this way. So those discussions didn't have to have that group of people all the time.
And I like that kind of waterfall, first serverless, then containers, then EC2. How did you notice that at the beginning everybody was well, I will go to containers? Not everybody, but a bigger majority could not find the solution with serverless, and they end up doing containers. But maybe now it's 90%, 95% of the things are serverless, and just really few are have you seen a change in that?
Yes, for sure. Have you been working at Trustpilot, or it sounds like you know all the things? I mean, in the beginning when we put the concept, you couldn't develop C# in Lambda function, and our before that, all of our stack was in C#. So we had many developers that only develop in C#. So that was one case where they couldn't go to serverless. And we saw a big change when .NET Core was introduced and supported in Lambda functions, and that's when we have some graphs showing like how many EC2s we had, how yes, and Lambda function. And the moment when that was introduced, we saw like a big difference. But yeah, for some time, for a long time, we've seen like Lambda function and ECS, like containers. We've seen like going side by side. So yeah, there were certain scenarios where people will always go for Lambda function because they were used with like, oh, that's a scenario where I should use that. But now, yeah, it actually it changed. It finally changed.
And I think also Lambda has gone through so many changes lately of enabling like other use cases. I think, for example, this provision concurrency, being able to have warm Lambdas, it's something maybe in some use cases you really need it, and that's, they are having longer executions now. You can execute for 15 minutes. That's opens the possibilities of a lot of new use cases. Now the maybe in Trustpilot and in other companies, the support of the elastic file system, where you can attach very big dependencies, because those are like the typical excuses that, well, they are not excuses, they are reasons why you cannot move to Lambda, but AWS is working hard on trying to remove all your excuses.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. That's why now I see more and more going into Lambda, because, yeah, as you mentioned, it's constantly evolving, which is amazing.
Yeah. So little by little, all your engineers were brainwashed into serverless. That's good. And what you do with new people? So it's very hard to hire serverless developers. So do you have like a training, or like what is the process with new people?
Yeah, I mean, normally we don't look for people that have experience with serverless.
You will not hire anybody. At least right now, it's very hard to find.
True. Yeah, but no, I mean, we got to a level where we are confident that we can teach and help someone that never used these technologies to learn it quickly, like very quickly. So yeah, we actually don't necessarily look for people with experience. I mean, it's great if you have it.
Sure.
We're not going to say no, especially if you're like super advanced. We probably will learn from you because we don't know everything for sure. But yeah, no, I mean, it's we just try to give them time, and like we understand that it's not something that you just learn overnight. And it's not that much about learning the tooling, because of course you can read about it, but it's more in like thinking that way, thinking about those possibilities that you have, and when you have new scenarios, how you adapt all these tools that you have to get you what you need. And I think that comes with some experience.
And I think that's the biggest kind of challenge, at least for me, for serverless, because making Hello World is very simple. You can do it in 5 minutes, make it scalable, global available, and it's the best Hello World you can write in the world. But then when you want to get to production applications that are more complex, then I think the change on mentality of going, if you are coming from on-premise to virtualization to containers, you always keep the same kind of way of coding. But when you go to the serverless world, it's a totally different monster. It's an event-driven, asynchronous, like things. You tend to not reinvent the wheel, so you are kind of lazy in a way to try to reutilize as much as possible. So the way that developers need to think and also to communicate with other developers and other teams is very, very different than when you're building your own box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing that takes longer. It's just the experience, basically. You need to get the experience of playing with this, with all these new toys. And yeah, I can't remember who said that, but I found it like very, very funny that all these things, all these services in AWS, it's like Lego blocks, and then you try to assemble them, like, oh, is this working? No, like, and you know, when you're a kid, it takes you a bit of time to put them together and see how you get to the picture that you want, but in time you get better. So
definitely, and I always like the association with Lego blocks, because they are all different shapes and you have different services, not only code, because I think that's also something, if you come from traditional, you think about code, but when you're in the serverless world, you need to combine managed services as much as you can, and messaging tools like queues and buses and all kind of things, and then start putting like your code where strategically you need it. And besides code, you have a lot of configuration that starts becoming as important as code. That in the prehistoric times, we didn't care much about configuration. Maybe it was something that DevOps were doing, and that's it. But now developers need to embrace configuration. Yes. So it's an interesting process.
Yeah, but I mean, now that you mentioned like configuration and the fact that previously was you would rely on DevOps, that's one of the things that I really like about the cloud and serverless, the fact that I don't need to ask someone else. I can do everything from one end to another myself, and go and configure, and like, oh, do I need the bigger instance? I can go and do that myself. Or do I need to scale this more? Like, I can adjust the scaling policy and so on. So yeah, it makes me as a developer more flexible, for sure, and I love that.
Yeah, but I imagine you still have a kind of DevOps tool or operations team in Trustpilot, because that's one of the myths of serverless. You don't need. Yes, you need.
I'm not saying we have removed the no. They are very much needed.
Because different problems.
Exactly. They still need to do the more advanced things, because I don't have the experience or the time to do all of those configurations and so on. And plus, they are one of the first to go and try some of the new tooling that AWS is releasing. So yeah, you definitely need DevOps or SRE or
whatever you like to call them.
Yes, but as a developer, also you have more flexibility now, and you can move quicker. And that's the part that I like. I can move quicker now with this.
So now you have this idea of serverless first, but we said that, well, serverless maybe not always, and I kind of agree with that. It's like tools. You have tools. You will not use a hammer for everything. You might need a screwdriver, things like that. So when serverless or when not serverless, you have some kind of good use cases when at least maybe not serverless.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking of like some examples that I had recently, because AWS is always innovating and coming with new things. So I might give an example that like someone will be like, oh no, that's actually possible now.
Well, don't worry. This video will be up forever. So in next 6 months, people will say, oh, this is old. Yeah, look at the date when this is bad.
Exactly. No, but I mean, you still have scenarios where you can't use serverless. I mean, for us, our APIs are on containers. One reason is that we are not using AWS for APIs. We have a different vendor, so that's one of the reasons why it's on an ECS. Of course, we have the client applications, which we put on ECS, but just something that actually, like an example where I wanted to make things using serverless, we had some events coming into an SQS, and then we wanted to trigger a Lambda, and in that Lambda to call a third-party API and then save the data into a DynamoDB. All good. Sounds like the perfect scenario for this. But the problem we had was that the third-party API had a limitation that we couldn't call more than 50 times per second or something like that. But we would get like hundreds of thousands of events in the SQS, which will then scale the Lambda to try and process, because that's amazing. Yeah. It's very fast. So yeah, that's one example where we looked for solutions on how to make this Lambda slower. For once, we're looking at the opposite, like how can we make this slower?
Now there is a solution for that.
And yeah, we looked into like concurrent calls, like if we would stop, if we put that to be lower, but then it will just throttle the request, and then we'll put it back in the queue.
Even in the queue will.
Yes, and still wasn't the right solution for us. I found some solution exactly for this case. Actually, was Jeremy
Daily?
that had an article about this and how he was like trying to store a state so that like if you should call the Lambda or not, and it was like quite complicated made. So I think in the end we just decided, okay, we'll just make it in a container for now, and I'm sure AWS will come with a solution for this.
I think it's a pretty normal use case, like in a problem, like you have a third-party API that doesn't scale as much as your Lambda function.
Exactly. Yeah. As I said, it's funny. You're trying to slow down, and like you're always trying to go faster, but in some cases you need to go slower. So yeah, that was like one of the recent use cases. And as I said, like you could still do it with serverless, but it was a bit
too much complicated.
Yes, and in the end we decided, okay, for what we're doing, it makes sense to just have it in a container, and that one we can limit on to how much you will call the third-party API. So yeah, that's like one of the scenarios I can remember. It was quite recent that I looked over this. So yeah, and I mean, it's always a matter of looking at the situation you have, and if it's worth going one way or another. Because I mean, I know I do that as well. Like I mentioned cost and the fact that you save money with going serverless, but you also need to consider how much money you spend by spending that time on trying to build something in that way. So it's a balance, and you need to decide this.
Sometimes things, when they're overcomplicated, then they're very hard to maintain and to share the knowledge between different teams. So that's kind of, I think that the right thing is to choose the right solution for that particular moment with the level of knowledge that you have, the tools that are there. Maybe in 6 months, something appears that solves that problem, and then you can change it. And that's kind of the magic of these modular architectures, that it could take maybe a couple of weeks to rewrite that. I don't know, just saying something. But because the way that we are trying to, at least in the modern applications, architect everything is small and decoupled. So
exactly. So it's very easy to refactor things now, right? And if something new will come up, I mean, if Lambda will start supporting this kind of use case, I'm sure we will change it, and will be like 1-2 days of work to switch. So it's a matter of looking at the scenario and what
Exactly.
you can do and decide. And it's
Exactly.
not the end of the world if you
Oh,
don't
no.
go serverless or if you go to containers or well, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. But now let's switch a little bit the gears and start talking about databases, that I know is one of your favorite topics. And it's also mine. I love Dynamo, and I think you also do. So
Yes.
is that the main database for Trustpilot?
Yes, I'm thinking of the numbers. That's why I'm like,
Oh,
no. It's definitely the favorite right now.
nice.
We have most of our data in DynamoDB, especially when it comes to what we use for the client applications. It's definitely DynamoDB.
Yeah, and you had the migration, you said, from MySQL to Dynamo. Were you there when that happened?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell the story?
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one. So initially we didn't go. So we went from MySQL to MongoDB actually.
Oh,
Yes, and so we had the provision database MySQL. Then of course we had issues there with scaling and yeah, the use cases that we had weren't really what we could achieve there. So we decided to move to MongoDB, which was very trendy, I might say, at that time. Like,
was
I
that
think
when you started doing the serverless migration, or was?
no, it was a bit before that.
Okay.
Yeah. At that time, yeah, so we decided to go to MongoDB because, yeah, it made sense for sure. The type of data that we had was more like a document. So we started that migration, and then like in the same time, like a bit after, we started splitting our monolith into like smaller parts. I wouldn't say it was like
Microservices.
microservice. It wasn't really, was just smaller monoliths. I would say. I think that's how
Yeah,
every microservice starts. It's micro, and then it's like, oh,
a little
okay,
monolith.
we need to split this microservice. Yeah, so we started migrating to MongoDB, and we took the decision to move everything to MongoDB.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you
I
have
prepared
experience in your team of working with NoSQL, or was most like all the people were very experienced in SQL databases and heard something about?
No, we had the
Okay,
experience
good,
in-house with NoSQL and yeah,
good,
especially with MongoDB. So that's
good.
why we're like, okay, let's move to MongoDB, and we started that transitioning, and then yeah, we started splitting the monolith. So it was a lot of work on doing that for sure. And I can't remember exactly the time frame. It took a couple of years to move everything out of MySQL to MongoDB. But even before we finished that transition, we started looking at DynamoDB.
Oh man.
And I mean, yeah, it was obvious that like once we started moving more and more data, the company also grew a lot in that period. We started to see some issues with MongoDB as well, and it wasn't just the database itself. It was also how we configured that wasn't necessarily great. So we were having a lot of downtime because of our databases,
Yeah.
basically the way they were storing our data and using the data that we had. So yeah, that's when we started looking at DynamoDB. Was again very early stages for DynamoDB.
Yeah.
But yeah, we started investigating to see like, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah, it does.
What's it all about? And yeah, we started to look into that as well. But but I have some stories there because that didn't go that well.
The migration to Dynamo.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, at least we learned something from migrating everything to MongoDB. We learned that you shouldn't move everything into one type of database. So yeah, so we started looking to DynamoDB, and we're like, this is just a key value store, and what can we use it for? And with all the like, how do I provision? How does this work? It doesn't scale how I want it. So we had a bit of like, it's not that great. It just sounds great, but it's not really that great. So yeah, similar to how the journey with going serverless went, was kind of the same with DynamoDB. It took us a bit of time to understand a bit more and to try more in looking into this new database.
And I think that the change on paradigm with DynamoDB at least happened around 2018, when there was the single table design coming out and showing, I think, the kind of powers of Dynamo. Before that, it was like just throw things and help yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was around that time when we started to invest a bit more into Dynamo and see the real power of DynamoDB. But before, we were looking because, as I mentioned, we were having issues with how we're storing our data in MongoDB, so we had to. And actually, was quite funny. We had since this migration took such a long time, we had the celebration when we're done migrating all of our data to MongoDB, and at that celebration we had champagne even. Like, it was a big thing that we're done with this project. And at that celebration, I had one colleague. He came to me and he was like, "Oh, cheers, Angela. So now when are we going to move everything out of MongoDB?" And I go, damn you. Like, don't tell me this today. I know you're right, but don't tell it today. Leave me to one day.
Drink the champagne at least.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was quite funny, but that's what it happened. In reality, we were already looking into DynamoDB, and we started moving more and more. And I mean, we still have with data in MongoDB at the moment. We didn't transition completely because, as I said, we learned something. You shouldn't just jump and put all your eggs in one basket, basically, right? So now, we still have some things in MongoDB.
So you have like different services getting their data from Mongo, and some of your services getting them from Dynamo.
Yes, DynamoDB. We also use Aurora DB and Elasticache, and we're really looking at all the tools that we have.
So you embrace the single purpose database idea, to use the right database for the right problem.
Yes, and I'm really preaching that all the time. Like, just look at what's out there. Like, don't try to reinvent the wheel and try to use this database for something that wasn't created for. So, just look at what you have there, and it's easy.
And I think it's so easy nowadays because there's so many APIs to access those databases. So using a database, when you have these managed services, it feels like it's another service that is just getting data. So it's the same if you combine, I don't know, Neptune with Aurora and Dynamo, and it's okay in an application to have all this mix. Before, when you were using these databases, you need to write the ORM, I don't remember, ORM, these kind of things to process the Java into objects, and it was such a kind of mess of everything. Now you just call the API, get me that, do it whatever you do.
Exactly. Now it's so easy to move data around, and I'm doing this, like, I can say, like, almost every day. I'm like, oh yeah, I need this piece of data here and that there, and like, and I do it. Before was like, oh, I'm migrating like project of like how do we move this data from there to there, and you need to build like 100 schedulers that will take care of that, and what happens when you get an error, and like someone else that will check, and so yeah, it's very easy.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, it's very easy now to play.
And again, I imagine when you get new people in your team, they might not come with this mentality of the single purpose database, the NoSQL maybe first as a solution to most of the problems, because I think in client applications or in like applications that are facing client data, NoSQL might be the solution when you have a big amount of data. So how you go through like, what is the ways that you train these people into adapting this more modern way of thinking?
Yes, so I mean, with DynamoDB, it's similar where you need to try things and play around and try to put things in this way or that way, yeah, I usually try myself to just go, okay, let's look what do we want to achieve? What's your scenario? What queries do you need? And then go through that thought process, because that's what they need to get, like, it's that thought process that matches.
Use cases first.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, okay, you have all these options there of data stores, and then you have your queries. Like, what are your queries? Do you know your queries? Because you should, like, that's the first thing. Do you know your use case? Like, what's the size of the data that you're trying to store? Because if it's like super small, if you're coming and telling me you need to store 100 records, and you're thinking where, it's like, don't waste your time. Just put it somewhere. Don't spend time thinking about that. But of course, the problems are coming when it's a lot of data, like a lot of traffic and so on. And then, it's the thought process. And I actually have an example that I can share where people can see a bit more of what I'm talking about, like what was the thought process that I had basically when I did this.
That's perfect. Let's go to it.
This was a problem that we're trying to solve in Trustpilot. It's not all the data. I tried to make this example smaller, so I don't take like 3 hours of explaining. But basically, we had in the left side, you can see how the data looked. So we had like a business unit ID, then we had some category IDs, and it's a list, a country ID, an identifying name, which is unique to the company, trust score, review count, and the status. And the status can be claimed, collecting, or unclaimed. And then we started, okay, what were the queries that we're trying to make? And the idea is to get a list of businesses that have a specific category assigned and filter by the country ID, the number of reviews and status, and it should be ordered descending by trust score and review count. And that was one of the queries. And then the second one on the same data was to get a list of categories for a specific business. And then I started, okay, let's put this data out there in like a table kind of way, and started thinking, okay, the first query, because the second it's a bit easier, but the first query is like, how can we do this in NoSQL with all these filters? Like, I'll have to scan the whole table, right, to get all of this.
You don't want to do that.
You don't want. Forget about scan, I would say, like, no. So then I was like, okay, so I have a business unit ID and I have categories IDs, and I want to give like the first thing, it's a category ID. So I was like, okay, that means I need to split this, because it can't be a list. I can't search in a list of records. So I'm going to split. But now if you think that the business unit ID would be the primary key, it's not unique anymore, right? Because a business unit can have more categories. So it's like, oh, that's not going to work, right? I can't put that as a PK. But and the same with the sort key. If I put the sort key as a category ID and I make that like a complex index, how am I actually going to get the, if I give a category ID?
Exactly.
I can't sort by that, so that wouldn't work. And then I was like, okay, so I'll make the primary key the category. But in this case, again, it's not unique.
No.
So, oh, I went back. Sorry about that. So that's not going to work. So I was like, okay, let's look at what data I need in this filter. So I need the category ID, right? And then I need to sort by the trust score. So I'll put the trust score as a sort key. But again, it's like, it's not unique.
No.
So what can I do? Oh, I keep back. Then, okay, let's look at adding more things into this sort key. I also need the review count because I need to sort by that. Okay, I'm adding that. Again, it's not unique. Okay, what do I have in there to make it unique? It's the identifying name. And as you might see, the business unit ID, oh, I actually didn't remove that one, but I don't need it anymore, right? Because that one, it's actually coming from our way of thinking in MongoDB. You always have an object ID to your data, but in DynamoDB, like your primary key or your identifying key, it doesn't need to be an object ID. So we don't even need that one. And as you might see in my sort key now, it's unique. But looking like when I got to this point, I was like, okay, I'm on to something here because I can see I can put a lot of things in this sort key to get the answer that I want for this query. So what else do I need here? I need the country. So why not put in the sort key the country? Because as you'll see in this query, like I'm giving the category ID and then I want for a specific country. So I can give that one and put that in the sort key. And why do I keep going back? And then I also need the status, which can be 3 tabs. So I'll put that one in there as well. And I have the trust score and the review count and then the identifying name. So in my query, I can just say, okay, for this category ID, I need all the businesses that are in Denmark that have the status claimed and order them by trust score. And if that one is equal, then order them by review count. And then I get my list. It's that simple, right? So that's what I did. I think in here now it's the same slide. And yeah, then the second query that I needed was get a list of categories for a business. And that one was super easy to make. I just created the global secondary index with the business unit ID. And then in case your table is wide, very wide, you can just project what you need so you don't get all
the duplicates.
Exactly. So that's what I did. And actually in the first sort key, there is like a problem in there, which I'm curious if people will notice. I guess they can press pause a bit here and have a look
to see the error.
To see if you can spot the problem. It might be that like I know the scenario, but yeah, just to give some pointers. This sort key is a string, and I want to order by review count and trust score.
Yeah.
And the trust score, it is from 1 to 5, but the review count can be a very large number. And since it's a string, when you try to sort, you'll have a problem. So yeah, that's something that you need to take in consideration when you make this kind of complex strings for the sorting. For us, the way we fixed it was that we added the zeros in front of the number, and it was easy because we are refreshing this data every day in this table. So when we calculate the data, we pre-calculate all this data, and we look at like what's the maximum, like the highest number, and then we know like how many zeros we need to attach. But yeah, that's something that when we did this, we actually didn't think about it. And then like, what's happening? Why isn't it sorted correctly? And then we're like, oh, because it's a string. Yeah. But it's still something that you can fix for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, honestly, like getting to this was like, as I explained, like all this process, like trying and putting and like, okay, what else do I need in this query? How can I do it? And like making the results smaller and smaller by adding all these filters. Because I mean, you can still do it. Like, if it depends on how big your database is and how much you need to compress. But in our case, we wanted to make the results as small as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is really taking advantage of Dynamo, because if you were thinking about, like when you started, you have everything in a column and everything but Dynamo doesn't care. You can have everything while you have a primary key that is unique, then the rest can be whatever. And this is really taking advantage of that. You make a very complex compound sort key that has all the information you need.
And that's what I think it takes a bit of time to realize that it's very powerful actually, and you can do all these things.
And how you document this when you come 6 months later and you see these? Do you remember what you were thinking? Do you save the queries, or do you have some process to document this in somehow? That
we try to like have some sort of documentation. I would say we're not the best.
Nobody's the best
at that. But we're trying to keep like this kind of documentation where we put like, okay, what was the thought process, and we usually discuss a few people on these use cases. It's not just one person when it's a bit more complex and you're not sure, and then we'll have some documentation on the repository that is using this table, because it's we don't share context. We have like everything is bound to a context, so this data will be in a specific context, and that's where you'll find this information.
But I think it's one of the challenging things with these very complex tables, because sometimes you're also overloading indexes and things like that, and then you have these mixtures of items, things, and compound sort keys or primary keys, and then you're like, what the fuck I was thinking? And then you need to go through all the code to understand what you're thinking. I was like how you were sharing this information is always funny even for me when I'm doing my own demos. It's like, what I was thinking here. I need to watch this YouTube video again. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, even for me right now, I was like, I've done this like some time ago, and I was like, oh yeah, and now it's the country. Yes, that was correct. But you need some documentation for sure, and but things are changing also very quickly, so you're not going to find everything in there probably. And and this is like one way of doing things, and was like an example that it's a bit more complex, and it's like thinking about all this filtering and how you can adjust your data. But another thing that I've noticed with DynamoDB is yeah, again, people thinking in like the traditional way of storing data, and they just think, okay, I have category IDs, that's like my primary key, and then I have this sort key, and that's all that I can store in that table. But with the idea of white table, and I can share the next slide actually.
What is a white table?
So yeah, it's just you have many columns, and you don't just not everything needs to be stored. And for instance, in this example that I want to show here is we use this for different things. Like we have this dashboard, and we have multiple queries to the same table, but for different things. For instance, like in this case, I have a chart where I show the traffic by month, and I'm creating that, and that's something that I'll request in this table, and I'll give the primary key will be the domain in this case, and then say, okay, give me the traffic by month, and then I'll get the clicks in this example. Or I'll have another dashboard, not dashboard, like another chart where I need the reviews locations, and then I use the same table where I give the primary key as the domain name, and then I say, okay, I want reviews locations, and I'll get the country and the stars in this case. So it's like using the same table with for different use cases basically, and that's like also like something that you need to understand, that you can store different different things in the same
from
table.
Relational databases that you're so used to, that putting students in the students table, professors in the professors tables, and no, here you can have students, chairs, classrooms, everything in one table, and it's totally fine.
Yes, yeah, I mean, for this one, I just showed like clicks and stars, but if you look at the real table, I can't share it because, data. But it's like we have tons of columns in there, and it doesn't matter because you can scale, and it's for whatever you need to use it, and you can easily do this in the same table. And one thing that I noticed, like people coming from different being used with storing different things, it's like, oh, they are just storing a JSON into like one column, everything, and then you're like, but how are you gonna query all of those things? Like you need to just split it. You can have 1,000. I actually don't know the limit, or if there is a limit on how many columns you can have in Dynamo. I haven't reached that one. So don't quote me on like 1,000 columns, but the idea is that it can be very
and I think, for example, with these ways you can really optimize for the reads, for example. So if you have, I don't know, a dashboard for each customer, and your customer is your primary key, then you can do get whatever with that primary key, it brings everything, and then with that primary key or key combination, or even with the, like, you can bring so many things in one go. So it's
yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's again depending on the use case, but it's very flexible. And these are some of the use cases that you will not think about when you're trying to, like, when you're starting at least, because you're like, oh yeah, so I'll have my primary key, which will be this ID, and then the sort key will be this number.
And I think another myth of Dynamo, like another myth, I will not say myth, another thing that we do wrong when we go to Dynamo is to put IDs that don't have any meaning, because it's like you just, I will do an UIDD random ID, and it's like, but how you're going to fetch through that? What is like, why you're putting that? Just think about maybe something else that it gives you some information so you can use it for something, because that's your primary key. What is your use case?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and as I showed in the example previously, we had that business unit IT coming with us, and it's like, but do we really need this one? No, it doesn't give us any information. We need to fetch the name after and like all the other things. So why why store something that you
Exactly.
don't
And
need?
that's such a thing. Like the first thing you think, oh, ID, I just create a random ID that doesn't does any information, nothing.
Yes,
Just like, no, think about it. What is your access
yes,
patterns, like you were
exactly.
doing in the previous example? And then you realize maybe it's not the right way.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So now you have shown us some examples, and I think you are using the approach of the single table design. Is that a mandatory talk to watch when you join your team in Trustpilot, the Rick Houlihan talk?
yeah, I mean, exactly. That's how I started looking at these more advanced ways. I saw
Yeah,
his talks and I was like, oh
yeah.
my God, this is another world.
Uh,
And honestly, I actually recommend his
yeah.
talks to everyone.
I remember the day I watched the talk, I was fighting with Dynamo. I was using Dynamo so wrong. We were using Ryak before Dynamo, and Ryak basically you have key pair, but it's more a document database. So you store JSON, you cannot do anything with it, and that's how we started using Dynamo. We just throw things into it, and I was doing it so wrong. We had so many different tables. It was so complicated, and then I watched this talk, and I think my brain exploded. And then I collect all the pieces. I watched it again like 3 times, and I was like, I
Yes.
need to do this, and we rewrote everything, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, oh, it was similar for me as well. Like I watched his talk and I had to watch it 3 more times because
In
there
zero
was
five speed because it's so fast.
yeah, that too, definitely. But also like full of information, and you're like, wait, what? That one is possible. Wait, go back, go back. So yeah, I definitely recommend his talks, like all of them, honestly.
Yeah, in the
And
onboarding
it's
material.
yeah, I had someone actually new joining my team recently, and he didn't use DynamoDB before, and I just yeah sent him his this talks, and then also like some examples of things that we do in Trustpilot. I was like, oh, you should look there and there in that table and that solution, the other one, and like yeah. And then yeah, I think now he got really good at Dynamo and was like a very quick.
I think it's, at least for me now that I've been using Dynamo as the database I use for almost everything, it's so hard to go to any like relational database because I'm so used to leveraging streams, for example. I don't know how you do it, but for me, I really love that my database tells me what it's going on. Like it tells me, oh, I just add something, I just remove something. So I can really connect all these things together and make like an event-driven monster. And for me, when I'm working with other databases, it's like, oh, I need to know that you just added a row. It's like, why you don't tell me that you just have a new row or you just updated an item? Tell me about that. No, they don't talk to
Yeah,
you. It's like,
yeah, communication is the key
yeah, Dynamo
in
communicates
everything.
so well. It just tells you everything that happened. I was
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
so how you keep up with all these AWS services in your team and in your personal life? Because I think that's something a lot of people are wondering. Like, I can never be an AWS expert, and well, you can, maybe not of all the service. But
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to say. You can't be an expert in everything. I mean, maybe you can if you dedicate all your time, but
I don't know. I work on dedicating all my time, and I still don't know anything.
there you go. So yeah, I mean, I I don't know all the services. I mean, I try to keep like we have a Slack channel where we get all the notifications with the new things from AWS, and I have to be honest, I skip notification about things that I don't
Sure.
use. I usually try to see, okay, when there's something completely new, like a new tool, a new type of database and so on, I just look to see, okay, is this something that interests me right now, or it might interest me in the future, so I know like high level what
Exactly.
this for, but I can't keep up with all the new features. Like,
Nobody
no.
can.
Yeah, and yeah, I try to, we have that Slack channel and I get notifications with new things. And then whenever I try to do something new, I use Google
Google
to
is
see
best
if
friend.
it's like exactly. Um, and yeah, I just try to find out, okay, this come up or come out or not, or what's happening. The community,
Yeah,
especially like I can talk a lot about the serverless community. It's amazing,
it is.
and there is so much content, and you'll get support all the time. Like I bet if I write something on Twitter right now, a question about like how do I do this thing, a bunch of people will answer and come with solutions or tell me it's impossible and so on. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I try to keep up and yeah, look for like new things that are developed, but I try to look closer to
Sure,
the things that we actually use right now.
definitely.
And yeah, if there is something new, as I said, like I just try to know like high level what's about, because I might need it, and I
Yeah.
need to know that something like that exists. But otherwise, yeah, you can't possibly know all the things, because seriously, it's like every day I get like, I don't know, a couple of notifications with new things in AWS. I'm like, no, stop, but don't, you know. So yeah, it's difficult to keep up, for sure.
Yeah.
At least it is for me.
I think for everybody. And then one last question. How is your everyday or your normal day as a serverless first mindset? What are the things that maybe change for you than you were doing before that now it's you don't wake up to alarms at 2 in the morning that your server is not working?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that one. Yeah, actually that changed quite a lot now that you mentioned the fact that, like as I said previously, we were having all this downtime and lots of late night calls because something happened with this database or with that service, and getting like email notifications. And now it's so quiet. Like seriously, it's so quiet. Everything just works. And you know, we have some services that we haven't touched in quite some time, and you're like,
It's
this
working?
thing is still working, because I haven't heard anything. You're like, you get used with all those alerts, and you're like, it's too quiet. Like, it can't be that quiet. Something must be wrong. And then you're like, no, it's actually working. So yeah, that definitely changed with moving to serverless. Like everything just scales, and everything in terms of like infrastructure is done for you. You don't have to spend all that time. You can spend time on the things that you are the expert in, like building things for your business, and not just spend time on trying to create from scratch Lambda functions, or taking care of servers and updating databases, and
Operating
all of that.
systems and firewalls. And
Exactly. Like you don't need to take care of any of those things. So it's really easy. And the other thing that it changed for me, and I really love it. And I notice when I talk to people that are not working at Trustpilot, and like maybe they are not doing serverless architecture, and I mentioned like, oh yeah, today I had to create a robot, a scheduler that does that, and then I like say all the things, and they are like, and you did that in one day? And I'm like, yeah, of course, it actually took me like 2 or 3 hours. What are you talking about? But of course, they are thinking of all the things that we had to do before, like, oh, you need to provision a database, and you need to wait until that gets done, and then like, oh, you need the server, and you need to like get that one. And I'm like, no, I just like clicked a few buttons, and I was done.
Yeah,
And
I remember one of the things that before we moved to Dynamo, we have this RIAC database, and we had a huge, I was not in AWS, it was in my previous life, we had a huge amount of data, and we wanted to add a new thing in all the JSONs, and we have to go through all the nodes and iterate all around. It took us over 5 days of basically scanning the whole table. It was, if we did it too strongly, we'll damage our production throughput. When we did the same for Dynamo, that we wanted to add something, we just increased the provision right at, like, I don't know, as much as possible. Yes. And in a couple of hours, it was the same type of thing. We scanned through the whole database, but it was like so fast because you could just increase, like, okay, give me all.
yeah, exactly. And it's a matter of like 3 clicks, right? You just go and say like, oh no, I want to have like 1,000 reads. That's it. Done.
Your production doesn't get hard because you just have this unlimited amount of capacity.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it definitely changed the way I do things, and it made my life so much easier. And yeah, when it comes to databases, as I said, like before you had to talk half a year about the migration project and how you do it and how you make all these things possible. And now it's like, oh yeah, I'll just do it today. Like, oh, this afternoon, I have a slot free in my calendar to do this, no problem.
Yeah, so, definitely. And I think that's something that lowers the barrier to experiment and to try things, and like it's just so I think we have covered everything today. I just want to ask you where people can find you, and if they want to connect with you, or what is a good social network for you?
Yeah, I mean, people can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I use my name.
So I'll leave it in the description box. You can do like a YouTuber.
Yes, you can find me there. Yeah, I'm not a YouTuber for sure. I don't know all these things. But yeah, no, I just use my name, and Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm very active in reading, not posting that much. I'll try to change that for sure, but yeah, I'm not so much into all this social media. I know people have a problem with like spending too much time on social media. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I need to spend more time on social media.
Put a slot in your calendar, social media time.
Yes. Yeah. But no, yeah, people can contact me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well. But I mean, if you want to see pictures from my vacation, sure, go for it.
Sure, for your garden right now, because I don't think you're going.
Exactly. I think you've seen some of my videos with like, oh, I got carrots in my garden. I'm very happy about it. So if you are into that, you can follow me on Instagram as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I will leave all the links in the description box. And if you happen to be in Copenhagen, maybe when the user groups are back into existence, I'm pretty sure they can meet you there and have a chat.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, if people are interested in speaking to these meetups, they can reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to help them with that as well.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Angela, for your time. It was really nice to have you and hear all the stories from Trustpilot. Migration stories are always my favorite. So
it's always fun, right? It's like, and that didn't work out, and that didn't work out either. So yeah,
it's never
fun,
smooth.
Yeah, it was fun chatting with you. I mean, I can do this for another 5 hours, no problem. So yeah, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
This was the episode for today. If you like it, give a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments box below who you would like me to interview next. I'm preparing my fall calendar now, so I have some spots available for interviews. And I see you in the next episode of FooBar. Ciao, ciao!